Welcome back to Not Enough Nerf, everybody. Today we're going to create magic in the Blaster Labs. We're going to take an old laptop battery and we're going to create a beautiful lithium-ion 3S battery pack to power all of our awesome blasters. Let's get into it. Alright guys, I would like to begin this video by saying that if you blow up your parents' basement, it is not my fault. Please use extreme common sense when dealing with lithium-ion batteries. They are among the most dangerous batteries that you could ever handle, and if mismanaged, it can be very ugly. So with that out of the way, you're going to need a multimeter, some basic battery shrink tubing, definitely going to need a Dremel with any kind of little wire brush attachment assembly. Want to get some flush cutter, stripper, shrink tubing for your connections, lithium battery insulator ring, lead-free solder, medium to high-grade soldering iron, decent balanced charger, and of course your laptop battery. JST connector with 4 pins or 4 female leads. Any connector of your choice. Some people go for the XT60 connector because they're more common. I particularly use these connectors, which are proprietary sharp. So your typical laptop battery looks like this. This is off an older Toshiba. There's a tool that I did not mention at the beginning that you will need, and it's a spudger. Now this is normally used to open cell phones and tablets. In this case, we're going to use it to open this battery pack. I want you guys to be extremely careful when working around this battery pack. Be careful of how you insert the tool. Any false move can actually create some kind of short circuit. If you touch the wrong lead or if you stab the battery pack, that could also be tragic and bad. Stay away from doing any of those things. Use common sense. Basically, the battery pack is held together by these micro clips and it's all around. Without further ado, let's begin. So you're going to notice that with the spudger alone, it takes a little bit longer, but if you have something to pop these clips in, it makes your life a little easier. Just keep a steady motion and keep the pressure even as you go around. Just keep everything uniform. Before you know it, it'll start to give way. Alright guys, we got our top off. Looks like these are Sanyo batteries. The way you identify the batteries, I'm going to put some links in the descriptions of 2 invaluable websites where I learned a lot about battery identification. This helps you also learn about the battery's capacity. Normally anything above 2000 milliamp is okay for a couple hours of blasting fun. Basically what we want to do is get these out of the pack. We want to take all this fancy circuitry and all these nickel plating leads off of here. Alright, so we got the batteries loose. Most important thing is that you make sure you're not touching any 2 leads at any given time. You want to remove the leads one by one. You want the batteries to be naked, looking like this when you're done. After I remove the leads, I normally like to take everything else off of the batteries. Sometimes it comes off in a pretty nice piece, but it's not difficult to take off if it doesn't. You can kind of just rub it off with your finger, as you can see here, and it leaves just a nice clean cells. Anything excess you can remove with 90 or 70 alcohol. So after you have the battery stripped of all the nickel plating, insulators, and all the tape, the next thing you want to do is get a cloth, dip it in some 70 alcohol, just wipe any adhesives that might still be on the battery. Just basically give them a nice little bath. Now that your batteries are clean, you want to get your multimeter and you want to set it on DC, and you want to test each battery. You're looking for a discharged voltage of at least 3.3 volts and a max voltage of at least 4.2 volts. All right, let's get to testing. Alright guys, as you can see, most of them are above 3.3, hovering right around that 3.7 on average. That indicates a healthy battery. Now we're going to build a 3S battery pack, which means there are going to be 3 batteries in serial. What that means is that the voltages stack. So one battery is 3.7 volts, 2 batteries is 8.4 volts, 3 batteries is 11.1 volts. Alright guys, this is about the time you want to plug in your handy glue gun and have it ready, because we're going to be arranging our batteries and permanently bonding them together into the proper pattern in which they're going to sit. Now in my case, I chose what I like to call the triad pattern, which is all batteries in an upright position, creating the smallest horizontal profile possible. Alright guys, so now we are ready to arrange the cells in the position they're going to permanently sit on the battery pack. You can use this diagram here as an idea of how the leads are going to be connected, but first we're going to worry about bonding the cells together so they sit in a permanent position. Let's get on with it. Once your batteries are bonded together, you're ready to begin the installation and the terminal connection process. Needless to say, positive is going to go on the positives, negative is going to go on the negatives. Simple as that. Alright guys, once your lead is on, this is a time where you want to grab your Dremel and pop on that brush that I showed you guys earlier. We're going to tap on the terminals and make sure that they have at least a little bit of scratch on them. This is going to help the solder adhere to them faster so we don't have to put so much heat on the battery when we're soldering. Any kind of heat affects any kind of battery. So now that we're done scuffing the ends, it's a good time to bring out our battery connector, our balance charger connector, and our connection lead wires, which we're going to use to bridge the battery connection. Now what I like to do is use 16 gauge wire, and I like to cut exact lengths for each bridge, and I usually strip the wire completely because we are going to need to solder to the middle of these bridges for our balancing cable. Without further ado, let's get to it. As we get ready to solder, I want to remind you guys to use plenty of ventilation. Solder can be very harmful to inhale. As with everything, use common sense when doing your solder connections. Alright guys, once your solder gun is pretty hot and you have your connections already cut and ready to go, you're ready to solder these leads on. You always want to keep in mind that heat is always a bad thing for these batteries. So you want to keep solder on the battery the least time as possible. Just enough time to melt the solder onto the battery and the connector. That is it. The strategy I use a lot is blow by mouth, and that helps keep the battery connections and the battery cooler. All right guys, we got our connections in. Now you want to actually perform a quick test to see if your battery is producing the right voltage. The easiest way to do this is to get your trusty voltmeter, set it again to DC, and you're going to put the positive lead where your battery starts, which would be this lead here, and then you would put your negative lead where the battery finishes. So you're going to go here, and then you go here. And you should be reading in the 11s. So as you can see here, I'm already reaching my 11.1 volts, and that is optimal for your battery. If you want to test individual cells, let's say 2 cells out of it, you basically just put your leads on the corresponding part of the cell. So if I want to test the first lead, I put it at the end of the first battery. If I want to test the first 2 batteries, I put it here and then I put it here. And then I'll get my 7.4 volts. Just as easy as that. Now we're ready to install our balance charger connector leads. As per that diagram that I showed you earlier, I'm going to flash it up here one more time because I know these things are easier to screenshot when you show them a couple times. And that's going to be our guide for installing our balance leads. Let's get to it. Alright guys, so now our balance charge connector is in. As you can see, all the connections are set in place. You've cut the cable so that you have some nice little cable management there. You could always get your twist on here if you think one of them is going to be too long, but as long as it's a decent kind of slack, that's not a big deal. Now we're ready to install our battery cable, and you're going to use the same principle that we did here. We want to get the back of the battery pack first. We're going to put that part in first. Alright guys, so that was a good time to get some electrical tape, and then basically you want to do a couple of straps just across the leads, making sure that there's nothing touching each other. This is the final step before we apply battery shrink tubing to make it all clean and nice. Here we go. Alright Alright guys, our battery leads are protected with some electrical tape. Now what we want to do is we want to cut out the right length of battery shrink tubing. I usually let it pass about 1/2 inch over each side for the overlap. We're going to get our heat gun and close it up, and we're going to get to the testing phase of the project. Guys, I used a little movie magic to extend my battery's main harness. I didn't like it being so short, but yeah, basically once your battery is all nice and wrapped and you got your accessible battery balancing cable and your main harness, what you want to do next is you want to connect the balance charging board to your charger. By the way, I'm using a Tenergy TB6B. So once you have all this connected, you want to plug your battery balancing charging cable to the balance board. I'm using the 3S slot, and then your main harness, the main charging cable, depending on the connector you're using. So now we just want to configure the charger to do a balance charge. That way we can actually also check the voltage. We're going to select LiPo since it's a 3.7 cell. Some lithium ions are 3.6 cells. In those cases, you could select lithium ion, and that'll give you the proper voltage. And then basically you hold down here, it's checking the battery. All right, there we go. We got 11.99 volts. Now I had this charging off camera for a little bit before we got back on the frame. And now we're quickly back to 12.46 volts. I'm gonna go check here and make sure that all my batteries are close to that 4.2 volt mark. So looking good. And that's how you do it, guys. All right, guys, so as I promised, I want to discuss why I chose the 3S 11.1 volt battery pack for this blaster, which is actually rated at 6.0 volts from the factory. I'd like to remind you that I run an electronics business, and one of my primary day-to-day duties is to check values of circuit boards and components. Needless to say, Nerf has created a lot of underpowered systems for blasters over the years. Here are just a few that I can think of. But if you've been into Nerf for as long as I have, you know that there are many more. Sometimes I feel like with these blasters, Nerf designed the shell first and then decided to use whichever power system physically fits in the blaster, rather than what power system is more adequate for the power demands of the blaster. The Elite 2.0 turbine is just another case of underwhelming power design. After examining the motors and powers of this blaster closely, I concluded that it is fairly safe and fit to use an 11.1 power system as an upgrade. Again, don't forget that common sense and responsibility still must play a key role here if you want your blaster to last you for years to come. This video, I'm not going to discuss too much about how to put the batteries in your blaster. There's a gazillion videos about that. Me personally, what I decided to do here, once I soldered my male connector to my blaster, I did Dremel out very cleanly and professionally a few of these ribs, I guess you can call them, where the C batteries sit in order to fit this battery nice and snug. And then basically, after I connect it, tuck that around to the side here. The battery sits nice and snug. Even the springs of the C batteries help retain the battery inside. I did have to do a little bit of reduction here on the lid, but once I close it, it fits very nice and snug. And there you go, guys. Not much to it. This blaster fires really exciting. I think I have a little short clip on my intro vid of this blaster firing. I'm definitely going to do a review on this blaster and a complete mod tutorial on it as far as the battery, but the battery is the biggest mod on this blaster as far as performance, and it's, I think, what gave it the most horsepower out of anything you could do right now. I did keep all the factory locks and circuit boards in it, and even the factory gauge of wiring, which on this blaster, if I recall, is actually not that bad. I think this blaster has like an 18 or 20 gauge stock, a little bit closer to 18 or 16. I gotta double check it again. I don't have my gauge tester with me, but I will check it. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. It shoots, I don't even know what the dart rate is. Like I said, I got to get my crony back in action. But there you have it, guys. This is how you get your old laptop batteries to give you some more horsepower for your blasters. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you really want to see more content like this, hit the bell icon too. That way, you will definitely get notified every single time I upload either a short video or a regular standard length video. I love you guys. Till the next one. Peace.